He thought her silence meant peace, but silence is not peace. It is the quiet hum of withdrawal, the subtle disintegration of illusion before the soul chooses distance. Respect, he believed, was something earned, not something devoured. Yet she had learned the darker truth, that in this world of noise and fragile egos, respect becomes a drug. And most men and most women are addicted to it without knowing. It begins softly, like a compliment whispered too close to the ear. A man says, "I respect you," and the words feel sacred. They sound like safety. But beneath that sound hides the first thread of control, because what is given can also be withdrawn. He does not tell her this, but she feels it like a shadow in the back of her throat. The day she begins needing his respect more than her own silence, the addiction has begun. Have you ever wondered why being respected feels more intoxicating than being loved? Because love demands vulnerability. Respect disguises itself as strength. Yet it is the most subtle form of dependence. It teaches the feminine to perform dignity, not embody it, to earn, not to exist, to beg for recognition through restraint. There was a time she confused calmness with virtue. She thought that being composed made her powerful, but deep inside, her silence was not sovereignty. It was submission wearing perfume. Every nod, every careful word, every self-contained reaction was another way of saying, "Please, still see me as worthy." He respected her, but only when she was small enough to fit into his idea of grace. He respected her boundaries, but only because they made him feel like a gentleman. He respected her intellect until it mirrored his own. Then he called it arrogance. What he truly respected was control, his own reflected in her restraint. This is the hidden addiction, the quiet worship of being seen as respectable. It feeds the ego but starves the soul. It is how many women lose their wildness, how they trade instinct for image. They become palatable, digestible, acceptable, and call it power. But respect built on fear is not reverence, it is captivity. And one day the soul revolts. It happens suddenly, without words. One night she stops explaining herself, stops answering messages crafted to test her softness, stops performing humility for an audience that never applauded sincerity. She sits in the silence she once feared, and for the first time it does not feel empty, it feels holy. He feels the shift immediately. It disturbs him, though he cannot name it. Her absence is too precise, her stillness too deliberate. He senses something collapsing not in her but in himself. Because she has stopped needing his validation, his respect begins to decay. What is admiration when it no longer controls? What is dominance when no one fears withdrawal? He calls her distant, he calls her cruel, he calls her changed. But she is none of those things. She is simply returning to herself, the self she abandoned each time she smiled to keep his comfort intact. Respect is a mask men wear when they fear losing influence. It sounds noble, it looks civilized, but beneath it lives the same ancient hunger for control. The man who says, "I respect you," often means, "I fear losing the power to define you." And the woman who craves that respect is still seeking permission to exist. The dark feminine knows this. She no longer wants respect. She wants truth, and truth is rarely respectable. She walks through the ruins of her old self and finds the places where she once begged for acknowledgement. She does not weep. She studies them like crime scenes. Each memory, a moment she abandoned herself for the illusion of dignity. The illusion that if she appeared graceful enough, she would be safe. But safety is not the feminine's destiny. Sovereignty is. The witch archetype awakens here in the moment she realizes that silence, when rooted in self-possession, is not absence. It is domination. The witch does not argue. She does not explain. Her very stillness rearranges power in the room. The man who once felt superior begins to stumble over his confidence. He cannot bear the lack of reaction. Respect, once his currency, loses all value. She does not threaten. She does not warn. She simply disappears from his emotional equation. And in that disappearance, he confronts the truth he spent years avoiding. That respect was never love. It was control disguised as virtue. The addiction shatters when she stops needing it. The spell breaks when she stops performing worthiness. The moment she ceases to seek respect, she becomes the embodiment of it. Tonight, sit in silence. Do not justify. Do not explain. Let someone feel your absence like a funeral. Watch how they scramble to resurrect the version of you that once begged. Do not help them. Let them drown in the quiet they once mistook for submission. Respect is the currency of fragile souls. They trade it for validation, using it to purchase cant. Raw disguised as morality. But for those who have awakened, respect becomes poison, a silent addiction that keeps them tethered to perception. She has seen this. She has felt it. The trembling need to be regarded as noble, as rational, as good. It was the leash that kept her from her rawest self. He once admired her for her composure, the way she never raised her voice, the way her emotions seemed so measured, so delicate. He mistook suppression for strength. But beneath that composure, something darker was growing, resentment wrapped in serenity. Because every time she swallowed her truth to maintain his comfort, a piece of her wildness died. Respect trained her to be acceptable. Love had demanded too much vulnerability. Desire had burned her once, but respect had slowly anesthetized her. It made her numb. The slow death of authenticity hidden under polite gestures and rehearsed calm. The more they respected her, the less they saw her. In Jungian terms, this is the death of the anima, the suffocation of the instinctive feminine under the weight of moral performance. She becomes the good woman, the archetype society worships yet secretly despises. The one who sacrifices her rage to keep peace, her intuition to preserve harmony. Her silence becomes her reputation, her compliance her crown. But the psyche always rebels. Every suppressed instinct demands resurrection. The shadow whispers in dreams, in irritations, in quiet moments of disgust at the mirror. She begins to feel the falseness of her own image. The woman everyone admires does not feel alive. Respect becomes the coffin, admiration the nails. And one day, she refuses the ritual. He notices first in her eyes. They no longer soften when he speaks. They observe, unblinking with the calm precision of a predator studying prey. He senses the reversal of gravity, that power has shifted invisibly yet completely. Her silence no longer pleads, it judges. Her stillness no longer yields, it exposes. He says she has changed, but what he means is, she has remembered. This remembering is violent. It tears away the mask of the civilized feminine and exposes what lay beneath, the siren, the witch, the Medusa. Not monsters, but mirrors, symbols of the feminine energy unchained from approval. They embody what men fear, the woman who cannot be managed through respect, the woman who no longer needs to be seen as good. Her silence becomes ritual, a spell without words. Each unspoken sentence cuts deeper than argument. He feels small beneath the weight of what she no longer gives. Her absence becomes louder than her voice ever was. He finds himself chasing validation from a ghost that no longer exists. Respect collapses when it is no longer desired. Because respect depends on performance, on the visible exchange of recognition. When she stops participating, the entire illusion dissolves. He must confront what he truly wanted, not a partner, but an echo. This is the archetypal disintegration Jung described. The projection shatters. The man faces the fragments of his own idealized anima, and the woman faces the part of herself that once needed to be defined by him. What follows is the chaos of liberation. It is not peaceful. It is not kind. It is a psychic earthquake that destroys false hierarchies. You, listening to this, have likely felt it, that quiet fury that rises when someone calls you calm while you're dying inside. That moment you realize being respected has never fed your soul. It has only kept you domesticated. You mistook containment for power, when true power is the refusal to be contained at all. So you begin to unlearn. You stop answering immediately. You stop explaining what you meant. You stop defending your tone. You let your silence hang in the air like smoke. Those who relied on your softness will suffocate in it. They will call you cold, arrogant, detached. Let them. They are describing the death of their influence. The addiction weakens. Respect loses its taste. You no longer crave recognition, you crave truth. Even if truth makes you hated. Even if truth isolates you. Because solitude without distortion is sweeter than validation built on illusion. The dark feminine emerges through this isolation, not as a wounded girl seeking apology, but as a mirror held to the collective shadow. Her very presence demands confrontation. Her silence dismantles ego. She is not respected. She is feared, understood, and eventually worshipped, not because she seeks it, but because she has transcended it. Her respect now belongs only to herself. Every boundary, every withheld explanation, every quiet withdrawal is sacred. She no longer offers her dignity as proof of goodness. She embodies it. And those who once sought to define her will spend the rest of their lives haunted by the memory of the moment she stopped needing them. He began to sense it in her absence. The air around her changed. It no longer reached for approval, no longer curved itself to fit the shape of his expectations. Her silence was not emptiness anymore. It was judgment, not the moral kind, but the kind that comes from clarity, the kind that strips illusion bare. He used to feel powerful in her presence. His respect was the leash, her composure the obedience. Yet now when she speaks, her words are surgical. Each one lands like a blade, not to wound but to reveal. Because respect built on imbalance cannot survive exposure, it collapses under the weight of truth. This is where the addiction reveals its anatomy. Respect becomes the soft cage people build to avoid rejection. They trade authenticity for approval, edge for acceptance, soul for civility. The ego thrives on this exchange. It believes that to be respected is to be safe. But safety is a lie. What is safe is rarely sacred. What is sacred must often burn. He fears her now, not because she threatens him, but because she mirrors him. In her detachment, he sees everything he projected, his superiority, his certainty, his control dissolving. Respect no longer protects him from himself. It exposes him. Her silence holds up the mirror, and what he sees there is his own dependency, his own hunger for validation, his own addiction disguised as admiration. She doesn't hate him. Hatred still implies connection. She has ascended beyond emotion's reach. Her calm is not forgiveness, it is sovereignty. There is nothing left to forgive when you understand the mechanics of illusion. She sees now that every man who claimed to respect her was terrified of her truth, because truth in a woman is dangerous. It cannot be bargained with. It cannot be seduced. It cannot be owned. So she no longer performs. She no longer dresses her intelligence in softness. She no longer shrinks her insight to protect fragile egos. The performance dies, and in its death, power is reborn. In Jungian psychology, this is the confrontation with the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains everything repressed, unacknowledged, disowned. For the feminine, it is rage, instinct, sensuality, pride, all the things she was taught to hide beneath politeness. When she integrates these, she becomes whole, and wholeness to the unawakened looks like danger. She walks through her memories like ruins. Each recollection is a shrine to the times she betrayed herself. Every time she bit her tongue to seem wise. Every time she accepted disrespect disguised as diplomacy. Every time she smiled when she wanted to scream. She studies these memories not with sadness, but precision, like a surgeon examining a disease she has finally cured. He senses her distance and mistakes it for loss of affection. He cannot comprehend that affection has been replaced by clarity. He calls her cruel. He calls her ungrateful. But cruelty is what the weak call boundaries. Gratitude is what they demand when they can no longer control. Her silence now becomes mythic. It has weight, gravity, consequence. It dismantles his ego piece by piece. Because her withdrawal is not punishment, it is reflection. It forces him to face his own emptiness, his own craving for dominance disguised as respect. And you listening, remembering, know this cycle intimately. The moments when you begged for someone to simply treat you with dignity, the endless rehearsals of words in your mind trying to be understood, the exhaustion of performing rationality while being devoured by emotional starvation. You called it maturity, you called it balance, but it was self-erasure, a slow extinction of the self to remain acceptable. No more. Now you let the silence speak. You allow discomfort to bloom. You no longer chase resolution. You let the tension hang until it burns through the illusion. Those who truly see you will remain. Those who needed your compliance will vanish. That is the purification. That is the fire every sovereign woman must walk through. In that fire, she becomes untouchable, not because she avoids pain, but because she no longer fears misunderstanding. She can be misjudged, mislabeled, misremembered. It no longer matters. Her truth does not depend on perception. Her worth is not an argument. Her existence no longer requires applause. He cannot reach her anymore. His respect, his guilt, his attempts to reconcile, they bounce off her calm like stones thrown into a void. The witch does not explain her silence to the villagers. She lets them invent their stories while she tends to her rituals. She knows they need her more than she ever needed them. And in that knowing, her power crystallizes, sharp, quiet, eternal. Tonight, do not seek respect. Seek silence. Let it rearrange your desires until all that remains is truth. Those who once praised you for being composed will tremble when they realize composure was never your cage, it was your blade. He thought her silence was a test, that if he waited long enough, she would return with gentleness, with gratitude, with the version of he. Our self that once made him feel whole, but silence does not rewind time, it rewrites it. And in the rewriting, he no longer exists as he once did, because she no longer sees him through the veil of respect. She sees him as he is, ordinary, mortal, unmasked. There is no cruelty in her stillness, only consequence. Every word he ever used to shape her image now turns against him. Every gesture of admiration that was laced with control disintegrates. Respect, once his weapon, now lies broken at her feet. He stands before her stripped of his power, trembling under the weight of what she no longer gives her attention. Respect is not love. It is the mask love wears when fear enters the room. It flatters the ego, but it cannot feed the soul. It is the contract of people who wish to appear virtuous while remaining untouched by vulnerability. He wanted to be respected. She wanted to be free, and the two could never coexist. When she withdrew her need for respect, something ancient awakened within her. The serpent of the psyche, coiled at the base of the soul, began to rise. The kundalini, the dark current of transformation, moved through her veins like fire. Not mystical, but psychological, the rising of awareness from repression to realization. Each breath tore another illusion apart. Each heartbeat reminded her that she had been asleep for too long. The addiction to respect had been the final chain. She did not crave his love anymore. She no longer needed his admiration. But respect, that quiet acknowledgement of her value, had lingered as her last weakness. Now even that dissolves. What remains is indifference, and indifference is the final form of liberation. He tries to provoke emotion. He seeks her reaction like a starving man searches for food. But her silence is not passive. It is active destruction. Every unspoken response is a mirror turned toward his own desperation. He cannot tolerate reflection. He mistakes it for cruelty because he has never seen himself without her empathy softening the image. She used to make excuses for his fragility. Now she lets it crumble. The queen does not kneel to comfort the boy who shattered his own illusions. She watches, unmoved, because compassion without boundaries is decay, and she has no intention of dying again. The psychology of this moment is sacred. It is the individuation Jung spoke of, the death of projection. The feminine no longer seeks validation from the masculine image. The anima withdraws her energy, forcing the animus to confront his shadow, the fear of losing authority, the terror of insignificance. In that confrontation, both can either evolve or perish. For her, evolution is inevitable. The woman who has seen through the performance cannot return to it. Respect had been her stage costume. Without it, she stands naked before her own truth and feels no shame. Her worth does not require witness. Her power does not need applause. Her silence is the sound of a system collapsing. He cannot understand why it hurts so much. He believes she punished him, but punishment requires emotion and she feels none. What he suffers from is not her cruelty, it is withdrawal. The same way an addict suffers when the drug disappears. Respect was his narcotic too. Her gaze, her admiration, her measured politeness, they fed his sense of order. Now, without them, his identity disintegrates. This is how control dies. Not in war, but in indifference. The most terrifying rebellion is not rage, but serenity. She stands in that serenity, untouchable. The world misreads her silence as bitterness, but it is the silence of arrival. She no longer argues. She no longer teaches. She no longer explains the difference between respect and reverence. She simply embodies it, and in that embodiment, she becomes myth. The Medusa archetype lives in her now, the woman whose gaze petrifies not because she curses, but because she sees. Her perception is too clear, too unforgiving. Those who look into her eyes see their own truth reflected, and it turns them to stone. You have felt this too, the moment when clarity becomes unbearable. When you realize that your silence, once dismissed as weakness, has become the very thing they fear. That your restraint is not submission, but precision. That your absence wounds deeper than your presence ever did. This is the art of the dark feminine, to speak without words, to destroy without movement, to heal without mercy. Tonight, you do not need to be respected. You do not need to be understood. You only need to remain silent long enough for truth to echo back to those who once mistook your composure for compliance. Let them sit in the discomfort of your detachment. Let them choke on the space you leave behind. You owe no explanation for your silence. It is not emptiness, it is sovereignty. He begins to wander through her absence like a man lost in a cathedral where the altar has vanished. He calls it silence, but it is more than that. It is judgment, not of him alone, but of the world that raised him to believe that women exist to reflect his worth. Now, without her reflection, he sees the cracks in his own image, the hollowness behind the facade of strength. Respect was his final defense, the illusion that he was noble, honorable, balanced. But beneath that mask was fear, fear of irrelevance, fear of powerlessness, fear that his admiration was never love, only self-preservation. Because to truly love, a woman is to be seen by her, and to be seen by her is to lose control. When she stops needing his respect, his illusion collapses. His worth, once tethered to her admiration, now drifts untethered in the void. He begins to realize how fragile his ego was, how it survived only through her approval disguised as grace. He thought he gave respect, but he was taking it, extracting it from her silence, her restraint, her constant effort to remain dignified. He needed her composure to feel powerful. But she no longer provides that sanctuary. The queen does not nurture the insecurities of those who sought to own her dignity. She lets them decay under the weight of their own emptiness. And as he spirals, she ascends. Not through arrogance, but through distance. She rises in stillness, beyond apology, beyond confrontation. Respect was always conditional. Power is not. She has become the embodiment of the sacred impersonal, the soul unhooked from the need to be perceived. In the Jungian map of the psyche, this is the threshold of individuation, when the feminine principle no longer identifies with her social persona. The persona dies. The shadow integrates. The self emerges, complete, self-contained, radiant yet cold. This radiance is not warmth, it is authority. It does not seduce, it commands. He feels that authority like gravity. It pulls him toward confession. He wants to explain, to reconcile, to name what went wrong. But she no longer speaks the language of justification. She speaks only in silence, and silence is the oldest language of power. He reaches out not for her body but for her recognition. He says her name as if saying it could bring her back to his world of agreements and conditions. But she does not turn. She no longer lives in that reality. For him, it feels like loss. For her, it is rebirth. She had spent years trying to earn respect in a world that weaponized perception. Every man who claimed to admire her secretly sought to define her. Every system that praised her virtue demanded her compliance. Every compliment was a leash. Now, she feels none of it. Her silence is not emptiness. It is creation, the void before the storm, the stillness before the cosmos reshapes itself. This is the paradox of the dark feminine. She destroys illusions not out of vengeance but necessity. Creation cannot happen without destruction. To birth the true self, the false self must die. And the false self was built entirely on the addiction to being respected. She remembers the woman she used to be, careful, eloquent, endlessly composed. She could soothe tempers, translate emotions, maintain order. Everyone called her wise, mature, balanced. But none of them saw the exhaustion behind her eyes, the invisible labor of containment, the silent begging to be allowed to be wild. Now she doesn't explain her change. Change that deep cannot be explained, it can only be embodied. Her stillness radiates the quiet terror of one who has seen the truth and survived it. He can no longer meet her gaze, not because she despises him, but because she no longer mirrors his fantasy. Her eyes reflect only what is real, and reality, when stripped of illusion, is unbearable for those who have lived in admiration's comfort. You have known this feeling too, the weight of a room growing quieter as you withdraw your energy. The eyes that once adored you now search for the version of you that kept them safe. But that version no longer exists. She was a ghost, built to please. You buried her with your silence. Now you walk with the certainty of one who no longer needs to be liked, understood, or respected. You are the silence after revelation, the void that swallows the performance of virtue. Respect may still be offered to you, but it no longer enters you. It cannot stick to a surface that no longer seeks validation. You are beyond transaction, beyond approval. He will remember you as the woman who did not fight, did not shout, did not beg. He will remember your calm, and it will haunt him, because calm is what remains when attachment dies. Tonight, let silence speak for you. Let respect decay in your absence. Let those who misunderstood your composure learn the difference between obedience and power. Do not return to explain the lesson. The woman who respects herself no longer bargains for acknowledgement. She withdraws, and the world rearranges itself around her absence. He will try to rewrite the story to make sense of her withdrawal. He will tell himself she grew cold, that she became detached, that she lost the softness that once made her magnetic. But deep down, he knows she didn't lose softness. She simply stopped offering it to those who mistook it for weakness. What he calls cold is her clarity. What he calls detachment is her return to truth. For years, she had been addicted to appearing reasonable, addicted to maintaining the image of balance. Respect was the disguise she wore to keep the peace, but peace built on self-erasure is war in slow motion. The dark feminine understands this now. She knows that every woman who worships respect will one day resent it, because respect given by others is conditional, but respect given to oneself is ruthless. Self-respect demands the death of dependency. It demands solitude, silence, and a spine of steel beneath the skin. He cannot follow her there. His world is built on exchange. I give you admiration, you give me reflection. I offer praise, you offer control disguised as gratitude. Without that cycle, his ego has no rhythm. Her silence dismantles the dance. He returns to her messages, reads the words she wrote when she still cared to explain. Each sentence feels like a relic of another era, when her need for understanding made her kind, patient, reachable. But the woman who wrote them no longer exists. The woman who replaced her speaks in quiet truths too heavy for language. He begins to remember the moments she almost left before, the pauses after his condescension, the flicker in her eyes when he told her she was too intense, too ambitious, too proud. Each time she softened, performed calm, accepted his respect as a substitute for equality. Each time, a part of her soul dimmed. Now, all those dimmed fragments have gathered into one, a single luminous, merciless presence. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of integration. She has met her shadow, the part of her that once frightened her with its ferocity. She does not suppress it anymore. She lets it live beside her, breathing through her voice, moving in her silence. Her shadow is no longer the monster beneath the bed. It is the throne upon which she sits. He mistakes her detachment for punishment. He still thinks in terms of winners and losers, but she no longer plays games that require scorekeeping. She has ascended into something beyond victory, serenity, without sentiment. Her stillness disturbs him because it exposes the chaos he has carried all along. Her distance reveals how dependent he was on her emotional presence. He thought respect was mutual. It was. It was management, his way of keeping her contained, his way of feeling virtuous while still in control. But now there is nothing to contain, nothing to control, nothing to claim. And you listening feel that truth vibrating in your own bones. You know what it means to finally stop performing composure. You know the relief that comes when you no longer need to be the reasonable one. The moment you stop explaining, something inside you clicks into place. Power. Pure, silent, elemental power. People will call you difficult. They will call you distant. They will say you've changed. Let them. What they mean is, you've stopped making them comfortable. You've stopped offering emotional anesthesia. You've stopped rewarding their mediocrity with your grace. The addiction to respect dies violently. It dies when you stop defending yourself against misinterpretation. It dies when you realize that being misunderstood is a luxury of the free. Because once you are free, you no longer need to be clear to others, only to yourself. She walks through her days with a new rhythm now. Each step precise, deliberate, soundless. She speaks little. But when she does, her words strike with weight, not because they seek to persuade, but because they come from certainty. He still waits for a sign, some indication that the door remains open. But the door is not closed, it has vanished. There is no entry back into the realm where she needed his acknowledgement. That world is gone, buried beneath her awakening. And yet he cannot hate her. He admires her in the only way he knows how, with fear. The kind of fear that comes when one sees a God they cannot name, a silence they cannot control. Her indifference becomes divine. Her absence becomes legend. You will feel this too when you choose silence over justification, when you stop needing to be respected and start embodying reverence. You will watch the world rearrange itself, confused by your calm, unsettled by your lack of need. Do not explain it. Do not dilute it. Let your stillness be the mirror in which they face their own shadows. Let them project. Let them crumble. Let them name you whatever their fear requires. The woman who no longer needs respect has already crossed the threshold into power. She does not chase validation. She defines reality by her absence. The next time they call you cold, remember, ice is only water that learned to hold its shape. He dreams of her now. Not the way he once knew her, soft, attentive, endlessly receptive, but as a vision of silence standing in the center of a storm. Her face is calm, but her eyes carry the kind of truth that makes men confess sins they've never spoken aloud. In the dream, he reaches for her hand. She does not move away, but she does not reach back either, because in her world now, connection is earned not through desire but through depth. She has become distance itself, the kind of distance that demands reflection. He wakes trembling, not from fear, but from recognition. He finally sees what she meant when she said nothing. Respect was never about dignity. It was about control. The one who defines respect defines the rules of worth, and she had lived too long under someone else's definition. The archetype of the witch lives through her now, the woman who reclaims her own language after centuries of being told to whisper. She no longer asks to be seen as good. She no longer softens her truth for comfort. Her silence is not modesty, it is mastery. When she walks, men feel a chill they cannot explain. Women who have forgotten their power feel a sudden stirring, a haunting reminder of the fire they buried under obedience. Her presence awakens what the world taught them to repress, the knowledge that love without sovereignty is servitude, and respect without equality is a leash made of gold. He sees her again months later. The same woman, yet unrecognizable. She does not glow, she emanates. The air bends differently around her. He smiles, searching for an old script, a familiar rhythm. She does not return it, not out of malice, but out of transcendence. She is no longer performing humanity in the way society demands, apologetic, humble, restrained. She is pure essence now. He tries to talk. His words sound heavy, outdated. The things he once used to impress her, his intellect, his charm, his compliments, fall like stones in a river that no longer flows toward him. Her silence answers each attempt, dismantling his self-importance one breath at a time. She does not punish him. Punishment requires emotional investment. She simply is asterisk, and that being unmasks him far more thoroughly than rage ever could. You see, this is the final phase of transformation, when silence ceases to be reaction and becomes identity. She no longer withholds words out of anger. She withholds because there is nothing left to explain. Explanation belongs to those who need permission to exist. She requires none. He feels her detachment as loss, but it is his own dependency that burns. He has mistaken admiration for love, performance for connection, respect for meaning. Now, he stands before the void where she once stood and realizes that she was the structure that made his identity coherent. Without her reflection, he must face himself. And for her, this is the true initiation. The moment when she no longer flinches at being misunderstood. The moment when solitude no longer feels like punishment but protection. She belongs to herself now. That is the highest form of love. In Jungian language, this is individuation in its purest form, the integration of shadow, persona, and self. She is not good, not evil, she simply is whole asterisk. The siren, the queen, the witch, the innocent, all dissolved into one consciousness. She no longer performs polarity, she embodies totality. Respect no longer seduces her, praise no longer sustains her, validation no longer intoxicates her. She exists beyond transaction. That is why she cannot be possessed, cannot be defined, cannot be subdued. Her silence is no longer an act of defiance. It is her natural state, vast, sacred, infinite, the kind of silence that rearranges souls. You too have felt the call of that silence, the exhaustion of explaining yourself into worth, the aching need to be seen without having to beg for clarity. But clarity never arrives through speech. It arrives through stillness. Stop chasing respect. It will never feed you. It was built to domesticate you. Respect demands that you stay within the lines of what others find comfortable. Power demands that you erase those lines entirely. So erase them. Tonight, sit in your stillness. Let the world interpret your silence however it must. Let them say you're distant, arrogant, detached. Let them project, because projection is confession, and silence is revelation. When you no longer seek respect, the energy that once went outward turns inward. It becomes light, precision, knowing. You will move differently. You will speak less. You will begin to feel the world responding to your absence with unease, because they cannot locate your need and therefore cannot control it. That is the birth of sovereignty. And when the time comes, you will vanish quietly from their illusions. No warning, no explanation, no closure. Because the woman who knows her worth does not argue, sh. E vanishes.